All right, good afternoon, team. Without further ado, and thank you for all being here on time. At this time, I'm going to introduce Miss Newton. I'm going to turn the floor over to her. The academic team meeting is going to look a little different. Sometimes I do the regular things that we discuss, all the FYIs, but today we're going to do a training that's going to be facilitated by Miss Newton. I'm very grateful that Miss Newton, along with Mr. Beatty and Mr. Miller, have took on the challenge of organizing a multi-tier system of support. They've been communicating with the team every month to get different, get feedback or whatever. But this is the official training because we're going to be using this moving forward to continue to support our girls and strengthen the core of the academic team. So, Ms. Newton, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Crawley. I appreciate the opportunity to basically lead an academic support team. So I'm just gonna share my screen. I have a PowerPoint and some questions that I would like to ask you all as we get through this. So I appreciate everyone's attention and participation. Yay, there will be imaginary bonus points. Yay. All right. Sometimes the slides more time to catch up. Just one moment. Oh, sorry. My screen has started to do this thing where it doesn't share. Yeah, it won't
show the
share
PowerPoint
the
when
specific
it's-
one. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I have to do share the entire screen.
I have to do that too.
I called IT last week about it, and so
Yeah, it started ever since we got the new laptops.
is that what it was?
Yeah,
Interesting.
and then I was like, okay.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So most of us have heard of MTSS. It's kind of it's a multi-tiered system of support. It's a way that a school comes together to rank students in areas of where they may need general support to intensive support, so on and so forth. Here, we want to focus on specifically academics because a lot of times the MTSS system is actually used as a behavior modification support plan versus an academic. So we are focusing on the academic multi-tiered system that we have created here at PACE. Give me just one moment for the computer to connect again. And while that's connecting, I'm going to go ahead and pass out to you a brief explanation of the ATMSS system that we'll be starting here.
And Ms. Newton, I can actually assist with
Okay.
passing that.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
And I need one more. You got one more?
I do not.
Okay,
Hang
no
on.
big.
Oh, yes, Ms. Figueroa was actually here today. Yes, if somebody wouldn't mind sharing. So, no, we appreciate your time.
I'll share with this. And I'll just make another copy.
So we're gonna start off really talking about who we are at PACE. You know, everyone has their MTS system or some variation form of it, but we wanna make sure that we at PACE, we stay focused on PACE's mission, vision, and basically our guiding principles. So the PACE mission, as we always do, would you like to read it all together? On the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
PACE provides girls and young women an opportunity for a better future through education, counseling, training, and advocacy.
Awesome, awesome. So we want to keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. We're going to talk about number one, education. What is that? What does that mean? Then we're going to talk about the differences between MTSS and AMTSS. I know we have some veteran teachers in here, so we need to talk about and compare and contrast the differences between those two. And then of course ESE and 504, as some of us may not be too familiar with the differences. I know sometimes I have to go back through the book myself to say, okay, well, what really is the difference between these two, and how do we support them? And of course then the processes our processes and supports that we already may have, some things that we may be implementing in the future, and then of course Q&As. Now just because the end is Q&As, please don't hesitate to ask me a question while we're on that slide, and I will of course give the information and say, any questions before I move on, and then you just let me know. So let's start off with education. What is education? The Merriam-Webster dictionary basically says it is a process of receiving or giving systematic instruction. Does that sound personalized to you? Does that sound like we're able to build rapport with our students? No. So we, our educators, are the ones that come in and provide that person-to-person, that teacher to adult educational experience. With that being said, I pulled forth different quotes, and I want us to read one at a time and really discuss them to realize why are we here and how did we come here into this field of education. So, Albert Einstein, he says, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. So when I read this, it reminds me of sometimes that our students are not going to get it. They're not going to get it 100%. Our students might not get that A+, they might not remember that fact, that statistic, they might not remember to put that period or comma there. However, did we instigate them thinking? Did we instigate critical thinking? Sometimes that is truly the accomplishment. Sometimes that's truly what we are really just there to do, to provoke thought. And according to Albert Einstein, accomplished. That means check off the list, you have done it, and that's a part of education. Let's take a look at this second quote. Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. So, what is something that we miss out, what we miss out as being teachers here at PACE? Do we get to see our students walk across the stage? No, oftentimes we don't. Do we get to see them when they're adults and they're married and they have kids and buying property or travel the world? We don't get to see that. And that's just actually a teacher as a whole, let alone, at PACE. And we must remember and keep in mind that this is a place that we came into for passion. This is something we came into to instigate thought. We might not get to see that finished product, but just because we don't get to be part of the polishing of that finished product doesn't mean that our watering of the soil, the science teacher stuff, the watering of the soil, or the sunshine that was put on that seed, or the stirring up of the soil, didn't mean that that what we did was invalid or was for null and void. Sometimes that is just literally the role that we play. We are there to just kindle that flame. Sometimes we're there just to put another stick on that fire. Just sometimes we're there to blow some wind on it. We're not necessarily there to make sure that that person has everything together and now they're ready to go off into the world. They're just to know that there's someone there that gave them some tools or some resources. So keeping that in mind, we're just there to make sure that we instigate thought and we give them some tools or resources. It might not make it 110% perfect, but what can we provide? What can we support? What can we do? And then our last one, education breeds confidence. Confidence breeds hope, and hope breeds peace. Raise your hand in here if you have at one point in time been looked up to as more than just a teacher by your student. Maybe a mom, maybe an auntie, play cuz, right? Why is that?
Best friend.
Best friend?
We get that one a lot.
Yes, sometimes unfortunately. I'm not your friend. I'm an adult. Find your friends. But why? Why is that? Why do they feel that way about us? Because to be honest with you, we're not just here about just education. We're not here just doing a process of receiving and giving systematic instruction. We're there to connect. We're there to help grow. We're there to help fuel some flames. We're there to have our students just ask questions, just to think outside the box, to think critically. So how can we do that for all of our students who may need that specifically academic support? So let's talk about the difference between MTSS and AMTSS. Raise your hand actually if you're familiar with MTSS. I mean, we have some senior veteran teachers here. Okay, all right. So MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support. It's a framework to provide academic and behavioral strategies for students with various needs. It's synonymous with PBIS. Has anyone heard of PBIS? Okay. So PBIS and MTSS are synonymous in that it's usually something that is done school-wide as a way to help students with their behavior. Behavior and academics, of course, can sometimes go hand in hand, right? So sometimes students who have poor behavior, well, that's going to be reflected on their academics. Very rarely do we see a student excel academically and also have behavior issues, right? Very rarely. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but that's very rare. So here at PACE, we want to start an AMTSS. We want to stay focused on the academic multi-tiered system of supports. Why is that instead of also behavior? We have a department. Yes, go ahead.
Because we have the counselors over there to deal with
We have the
it.
counselors for that. Yes.
It's gonna be that obvious.
I just don't want to leave wrong.
I promise you. Yes. Bonus points, 10,000. There you go, Mr. Miller. So the great thing that we do have at PACE is that we have an awesome support system that is built into our framework as well as full staff for our counselors to really partner with our at-risk youth. I mean, they're fully certified, they're always here, and I would say honestly, I think they're doing a great job. I've heard positive responses from the students, and if I haven't seen a positive response, when they come back into my classroom, that behavior issue is no longer there. So what we can say is that we as a teachers, what we have here that is a huge benefit at PACE is that we don't really have to focus on the behavior strategies. We don't want to focus on the behavior strategies. We can outsource that, I'll put it that way, right? But what we do want to start developing is an academic multi-tiered system of support. And I will say that that's the part where our counselors really do end, right? Our counselors are not really that familiar in, okay, should they be in semester 2? Should they be in semester 1? Okay, what's the pacing for Edgenuity? Okay, FTE is coming up and we have graduation requirements, they finish this. So that's really where we need to make sure that we have that voice and that we have that documentation so that our counselors can use our documentation in their sessions, or that when we talk to the student is aware of academically their growth or where they may need some support. So again, AMTSS, Academic Multi-Tiered System of Supports, is a framework to provide academic strategies for students with various needs. It does match with MTSS in that we're following a similar triangle tier system. So we have Tier 1, General Core Instruction, Tier 2, Targeted Interventions, and then Tier 3, Intensive Intervention. So if you look at your handout that I have in front of you, and this is something that you can keep, this is something you can have, this is a layout of the Tier 1, 2, and 3. So what are some resources we can pull as teachers to know the background information or the context of our students?
It's like the academic summary?
Yes. Yeah, academic summary, very good. What else?
Test scores.
Test scores, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Trapp.
I mean, we can also just communicate with other teachers. I mean, see what the students need in one classroom versus another classroom, what strategies are working in one space, what aren't.
Excellent. Collaboration is huge here, right? And I would say that's something that I've experienced that's extremely beneficial at being at a place like PACE. I mean, literally we have all of our teachers in one room and we all know who we're talking about, even if we don't mention a name, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we continue utilizing that data, but we want to make sure we're being intentional, especially when it comes to our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 students. So utilizing data to provide targeted support to students with various needs. IEPs. We need to make sure that we're looking at the IEPs. We need to make sure we have access as to who we can speak to about the IEPs and who can even explain it to us. Now I know that we're going through a transition right now with our ESC specialist being relocated due to the school district in Hillsborough County and DJJ. But in the meantime, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I've actually shared that. I'm actually ESC certified. So I could be a resource for those questions. Not necessarily all of them. I can't write an IEP, but I can help explain some things in regards to IEPs and 504s. We also have an academic manager. Praise God for an academic manager, okay? Right? We don't have to go in as teachers into Ed Connect, which is now no longer Ed Connect, it's now something else. We don't have to go in individually and pull it up and so on and so forth. We can go to our academic manager who has all that information there for us in a binder. So our ESC accommodations.
May I have a question?
Yes.
May you share with the team where can we find IEPs, collectively, like if I was in a classroom, and where can we find that?
So we actually have a folder. We all know how to access the academic folders, right? So in the academic folder section, there's actually two different folders, and I believe they're color coded. I believe the blue one is 504 and the purple one is IEP. And once you click on that, you will actually see the IEP, actually a list of all the IEP students, and then you will see their uploaded IEPs where you can read through every single page. And for 504s, there's a chart there that has the students' names and of course their not their supports, but their yes. Thank you. Oh, I put here, orange folder. Okay. It's up here. We can also look up at Edgenuity, their progress report. I believe we all have access to that. Is that correct, Ms. Figueroa? Do you have also? Because I know you are spirited girls, so I'm not sure all you have access to.
Well, I'm sorry.
When it comes to Edgenuity, do you know how to
Yes.
pull up the progress report? You do? Okay, excellent. Course report, advisor, we all have our students that we're assigned to. Work samples. This is huge. This is really great. And keeping a sample of your students' work portfolio. I have spoken to you, Mr. Miller, and we've had times where we say, okay, the student's doing well on Edgenuity, but not as great as we like, because look at this sample we have here, and we can see the student write, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, thoroughly explaining. We need to make sure that we're collecting those work samples to show not only to our students, but also in our care reviews or to the counselors or even the parents to let them know, I know Edgenuity doesn't look good, but let's keep in mind maybe they're having a technological concern because look at their actual work. We want to make sure we are collecting some work samples, especially to show and help us as teachers to know what works for them, what doesn't work for them, how to make those adjustments, and how to make those gains for our students. Okay, and then we of course have our advisor, our bi-weekly meetings where we sit with the student one-on-one. All right, we bring them over, we say, hey, how's it going? Let me show you what I have. Tell me what you have. What would you like to do? How can we best support? And then again, some work samples. So even for the students who end up transitioning, I actually keep I keep their notebook. I keep their binder, and I sometimes go through it to again kind of do an assessment for myself, an assessment for that student to get a better well-rounded view of them. So let's go ahead and talk about Tier 1. Tier 1, base, foundational. These kids, they got it. Do we support them? Not at all. Of course, yes, we of course support them. Regular collaboration, that's what we're doing right now. We do that every Thursday at Care Review. We actually did that before we even had this meeting, always just talking with one another and sharing information about our students. Direct instruction, progress monitoring, high quality instruction, formative assessment and feedback. These are the things that we normally do on a day-by-day basis, correct? Right? All of this looks familiar. Anybody have any questions about, tier instruction and scaffolding support?
Sure.
Okay.
What is a scaffold?
Excellent. Thank you for asking. Great questions. So scaffolding support is something that we could often do with a student who just arrives. So our students just arrive, and we might get a little bit of data about them. Okay, they're coming from out of state. Okay, they may need to do some other courses, but what about their learning abilities? So at that point, we might want to scaffold their lessons, meaning that we're going to start with maybe a general question, and we'll go to some specifics, and then we'll provide some rigor. Sometimes we'll even change the assignment, right? Instead of saying, okay, I need 5 paragraphs, stat, right? We might say, provide me a summary of this article, or explain to me what happened. Explain to me what happened in 9/11, and then from there, once they're able to explain that to you, you're able to say, oh, okay, so they do have some background knowledge. Let me ask them, what are some of the causes and effects that America has experienced since 9/11? I'm pointing to Mr. Miller because you, not government, but a history instructor. So scaffolding is allowing a student or allowing us to assess a student on their level of rigor or their level of challenge or critical thinking that they're capable of, and then helping them continue to get to that level that we'd like them to get to. So yes, that's an example of scaffolding support and then formative assessments. Now, I'm going to continue talking about scaffolding support as we get into Tier 2. So Tier 2 is a little bit different. Tier 2 are those students that may have been here for those 30, 60 days, and we can already see they need a little bit more intensive interventions, okay? At this point, some of the things we may have assessed are foundational, and we know that a lot of our students are missing foundational things. So our student may be able to complete Edgenuity, watch a video, answer multiple choice questions, but maybe when it comes to writing what they learn, they struggle. So verbally, they can respond, but in written form, they're not able to do that. We want to make sure our students are able to respond in written format. So what that means is, let's be intentional again. Let's provide some supplemental literacy. These are sometimes those foundational things. Like, for example, maybe they need to learn how to take notes, right? Just learning how to take notes is actually a skill, right? Some students are not able to identify, okay, this is a key note versus a non-key note. Some of them literally have issues being able to identify, okay, is bold is important, or how does this graph connect with these words over here. Some students may need that breakdown for them. And so when we identify that, that would make that a tier 2 student. We might need to go back a little bit before we can move forward. Math intervention, study skills, peer assisted learning. We have a GLC team, but I know that there's at least one person in our classroom that we know is amicable enough to work with a new student or a struggling student and say, hey, how would you guys work together on this assignment? It doesn't have to be something, hey, you're not getting it, they got it, figure it out. Doesn't have to be like that. Remember, we're strength-based here, and we want to provide an opportunity for our students who are strong students academically to continue to shine and give them opportunity to explain something in a different way. And we also want to make sure we're uplifting our students who are struggling to know that here at PACE they have a partner, they have a team. So, peer-assisted learning, flexible grouping. Again, some of this we already do. We already do that naturally by having our 14 student minimum, by having the ability to do Edgenuity or to do direct instruction. Some of that is already natural. Even the way that the tables are set up. I know, Ms. Figueroa, you already have the table set up in groups. You know, I have my lab table, so the students are set up in pairs. So let's be intentional about the setting with in mind that oftentimes when we do seating, our seating is kind of based on behavior. Let's also start to try to take into account of the academics in regards to seating. Yes, we know we don't want this student to sit with this student, but can we choose to sit this student with maybe student C because we know that they would pair well academically?
It's just an observation of flexible grouping. Ms. Drapp and Mr. Miller have done that throughout the year, where they actually with Albright, which is a 10th grade group, they getting them prepared for the, the FAST testing, and so they kind of differentiated them and put them in groups based on where their instructional level is at, or their learning level. It's not based on behavior.
Right.
So you have like a group that might be the low level. This day they may be working with a particular teacher, Mr. Miller, and then the ones who are, on level, but we're trying to get them ready for the test. They'll be with draft, and then they switch up. So not, so so I saw that in real time. Like you said, a lot of this we are doing already.
We do it already.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example outside the classroom when you collaborate with your colleague, and it's happening.
That's awesome.
So,
Awesome. And Ms. Drapp, if you wouldn't mind sharing, how do you think that is supporting our students? Have you seen some students really gain from that experience?
Yeah, I really have, because when we looked at the test scores, which was the final result, the ones in that group in Albright had the highest scores.
Oh, wow.
Between all the other troops. So, I mean, is it just a fluke that the kids who made the higher gains were in Albright? I don't know. I would think not, probably.
Yeah.
And then, but because they had, 6 or 7 to 1 instruction every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Switching between the two of us. So I think it was highly effective.
Highly effective. Yeah. You can clearly see
Yeah,
the
there were
improvements that were made.
gains.
Wow. That's awesome.
Maybe not like a level 3, but there were gains. That whole troop, almost the whole troop made gains.
Right. That's awesome. That's great. So again, as Ms. Carly shared, we do this. We do this already. And when I say we do this already, remember there also had to be a moment where we said we need to do this. So as we continue to move forward in our school year, knowing that we now have an ATMSS team, let's again have those moments where we come together and say we need to do this. Okay, we did this with Albright. We need to do this with Bethune. Who can partner with who to make sure we do this for our students? We've got something coming up, or I'm seeing somebody who's really, really struggling. I've tried other things. Let's do some type of grouping. Let's work together. And then, of course, family involvement and support, and then differentiated instruction. So differentiated instruction, that's actually something that I truly do enjoy. Differentiated instruction is when you have 2 or 3 different groups going on at the same time, 2 or 3 different expectations. We're trying to get to the same fruit, but the expectations might differ. Am I making sense there? Okay. Has everyone or anyone used differentiated instruction before?
Or you may not know that you're using it.
Yeah, you may not know. Yes, I'm just being Miss Greer. I think I've seen it happen all the time in the classroom.
I mean, me and Ms. Figueroa did the training for differentiated instruction. I think I did.
You do because there are times I walk in, not only do you have some students in groups, but you also have students working on different parts of a larger project, right? So you have, I think, there were some kids that were working on some, it wasn't accounting, something, maybe a budget or something like that.
Oh yeah, they were doing budgeting on Excel.
On Excel, yes, and then you had some other students who maybe were not ready for Excel, and so
Yeah,
different
so
things.
they're doing it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you were able to kind of hop around and work with them where they were at. And the end goal still being the same. Do you know how to budget? Do you know how to, organize your income, your ingoing and your outgoing? Same product, but different ways of getting there. So now we go to tier 3. Tier 3 is in red because it's our most intensive group. Okay. This is our tier 3, and as we go through the tiers, keep in mind that we really don't want students on tier 3s. Some students are already going to be there, and we'll get to that in just a moment. They might start off there. But we really want to make sure that we don't have any students who we can get to a tier 3. Now we end up having students who arrive when they're in tier 3. That's just where they are. But our purpose of giving these supports is to be able to get them back down to a tier 1. So tier 3 is our most intensive intervention. Now these are the things I've listed here, but keep in mind that everything we've done from 1 and 2 is also happening in tier 3. This does not mean tier 3 is only for special education services. That's not what that means. It means that we're adding this on top of everything we've already discussed in 1, 2, and 3. So tier 3, special education services, those are our ESC students, 504s, extended learning opportunities, personalized learning plans, like maybe a PACE guide, or maybe something like
A roadmap.
a roadmap, yes. Extended learning opportunities, somebody wants to bring them in for a one-on-one during their planning period. Or saying, you know what, I want you to continue to work on this subject or this activity, even though everyone else will be doing other things, I want you to really be able to grasp that, and just giving that student extra time or even something to take home. I know we struggle with students bringing things back, but it's about us providing the opportunity, not necessarily about them, not bringing it back to us. Let's make sure we're doing everything we can to provide that opportunity, that strategy to them. And so when we talk about tier 3, let's go ahead and talk about our ESC students. ESC versus 504. Does anyone actually know the difference off the bat?
I know what 504 is, because that's the code, the ADA code is 504.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where it comes from. And it's just accommodations. 504 is accommodations, whereas ESC is for a disability, because we have a 504 when my daughter was in school for diabetes.
So you know this
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say one of the, just kind of, I would say 504 plans. A student can have a 504 plan, but it's based on a disability. So you could have, just because a student have a 504 plan, that doesn't mean that it impacts their learning.
No, she was
Correct.
gifted. Right.
Correct.
She was gifted, but needed a 504 to get extra time because she had a blood sugar issue
Yeah.
or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
accommodation
Mhm.
because it would make a impact on her life
And
activity.
then with the ESC, the exceptional student education, like you could be gifted.
Right.
And so we wanna make sure they stay in that status, so it's challenging, it's more challenging working with gifted students because of the fact that you wanna keep them, you don't want them to lose interest, so.
Correct.
They just as important as somebody that is a regular, have an IEP,
Mhm.
or someone that might have a behavioral,
Right.
ED or whatever, so.
Yes.
So the ESC does impact education on both ends.
On both ends, yes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about our strategies, we need to make sure we're collecting all the data we can in order to know what strategies work best and work best towards what end, right? Yes, we want all of our students to learn, but maybe an ESC student will have a different goal or different objective than one of our 504 students, or even that they have goals in general, right? Some of us may say, oh, they're doing very well in math class, they're doing excellent, so I don't see where it's going. Well, their IEP is not for math. Their IEP is actually that they're struggling in English, or they're struggling with just reading in general, and so that's why they have this IEP. Let's identify what we can do to help them make gains in that area. So you all are spot on. For 504, 504s, it can be physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. One person actually described it to me as these may be changed in the next year or two. A student might be able to grow out of this, or they receive some healing, and then they no longer need a 504. I at one point had a student who, I think at the beginning of the year, was in a car accident. He hit his head, and so he had short-term memory. So they put him on a 504. His senior year, he was perfectly fine. So no 504. So a 504 typically, I always remember it's going to be temporary. Now when I say temporary, yes, we're still saying maybe 2 years, 3 years, but it's still a temporary situation that they may have, that something may have happened to them that caused them to need this 504. So things like anxiety, diabetes, epilepsy, dyslexia, low blood sugar, and what are the modifications needed? Oftentimes it's things like extended time. Incomplete classwork can be completed for homework, allowing them to, they can do it, they just need that more time to do it. Extended time to complete projects, quizzes, and tests, et cetera, et cetera. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at Ms. Carla, if you can assist me.
Yes.
We're gonna go and take a look at a 504. This is the example of what a 504 plan looks like. I'll be honest with you, even when it comes to myself, I don't see a lot of 504 plans. I see a lot of IEPs, I see a lot of ESCs, but not actually a 504 plan. As a matter of fact, I wanna say in my experience, usually I just have somebody come up and say, oh, they're a 504, but they don't actually explain to me what that means. So I've given you two. There should be one on both sides.
Oh.
You have one for a last name Walker, and on the other side you have one for a last name Carter, okay? So let's go and take a look at Carter's. So area of difficulty, can somebody read that part to me? What's her area of difficulty in the first one?
Like the accommodation?
Yeah, well,
Focus.
Oh, like what the?
distraction.
Yes.
Okay.
so focus, attention, distraction, very good. What are some of the accommodations that are listed?
Student will be providing redirection, proximity control, and verbal prompts, cueing.
So basically, we're gonna have to repeat ourselves, right? We're gonna have to use signs and motions. Hey, look over here, right? It's a part of our accommodation. This is not just a student who doesn't want to do the work. This is a student who actually needs that support. Let's take a look at the next one, area of difficulty.
Organization.
Organization, what's the accommodation there?
Allow incomplete classwork to be completed as homework.
Yes, so for us, that would be being able to access education from home, right? And knowing that that's going to need to happen. If we were to unlock a test, I know sometimes it times out at 15 minutes. Well, for this one, last name Carter, we might need to extend it to 30 minutes if we were to unlock from home. I know we have very different policies, but I'm just giving an example, okay? Then we have task completion and then testing. So this lets us know off the bat, we don't even have to think about it, right? When we think about ATMSS, it's how do we support the student? It tells us right here how to support them and where they're gonna need that support. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Let's take a look at Walker. So the accommodations here, refocus student as needed, provide breaks as needed. Do we already have breaks provided in our format? Yes, we do. What do we call those?
The take five.
Take fives. So
Even that.
it's within her accommodations that she's going to need to take fives. We know why we've started the take fives. We know that. But for her, she might need 2 per period, maybe 3 per period. And it's not to say, oh, well, she doesn't want to be here, or so on and so forth. It's part of our 504 plan.
Well, it need to be a take five just in their space, right? Just like put their pencil down, regroup, you know.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Drapp, for sharing that, and that's really where I want us to start going to. How can we implement this already? Yes, we know our school provides a lot. We're an exceptional school. We're an alternative school that is catering to students who are at risk, but how can we as classroom teachers, again, provide that support? As Ms. Drapp said, create a take 5 area in your room. Doesn't mean exit, it just means a break. So here's what it means, a break. Whether it's, hey, you can go to the back area over there, or you can go to the corner and color for a little bit, just making sure that that student is able to move away from that space of where their work is and to just take a breather. That is how we provide the academic support for the student with the 504. Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and keep it moving. I want to be aware of your time. So we talked about 504s. Let's go ahead and get into ESCs. ESC stands for Exceptional Student. Oh, I should have quizzed you guys. What does ESC stand for? And then you
Oh,
can
we
know.
Exceptional student education.
10,000 bonus points. Imaginary bonus points. Disability.
You got like 20,000?
It's okay. There's plenty of opportunity.
Oh.
So many of them that I've seen will usually start out saying SLD. Does anyone know what SLD means?
Specific learning disability.
10,000 imaginary bonus points to Miss Draft. Yes. Very good. Specific learning disability. Which specific one? It's just gonna say specific learning disability.
They don't always tell you.
It is, yeah. So you'll see SLD on an IEP. ESCs can also include students who have autism, students who are gifted, as Ms. Crowley shared earlier. Deaf and hard of hearing is also actually an ESC. Visual impairment, traumatic brain injury, or emotional behavior disorder. Does anybody know the acronym we use for the students who have emotional behavior disorder? Another 10,000 imaginary bonus points to Ms. Draft.
Could I just add,
Yes.
we do not accept EBD students,
Yes.
because we just, they go to a whole other, school that specializes with students with the behavioral piece. Have we accepted them in the past? Absolutely. Did it give us a run for our money? But the support from the district, absolutely. And we do them a disservice because we don't have this, we don't have this specialized, training to work with those individuals
Yes.
collectively. Every
Yes.
one of us will have to have, be ESC certified.
ESC certified,
Yeah,
yes.
so they have schools in Tampa that really work with them. Or public school, a lot of parents don't want to send their kids to public school.
Right.
But they have more resources in the public school.
Than we do.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
And it's important. I'm glad that you mentioned that because oftentimes, people will say EBD is the same as BAD, and it's just not. EBD is truly it's a disability.
That's what
It's just-
borderline personality disorder.
It can be underneath that as well. I mean, it's a student who will say when they get upset, they're not able to say I'm upset. They're not able to say I'm upset because of this. What they're able to do is through it, and we're like, oh, you're upset. Thank you for letting me know. And so it's a different type of support. It just is a different type of support for this disability. And again, I would not want to put anybody in that predicament who's not certified. This is not a response for at-risk youth. This is a response because of a disability, which is just different. So when someone has an IEP who is ESE, they're exceptional student education. They are going to have an IEP. The IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. So again, this is the context of which we can pull from to identify our students as tier 1, 2, or 3, as well as what we can pull from to identify where are their strengths and where they may need that support, whether it comes to academic support or what we need to do in regards to queuing, proximity, preferred seating, so on and so forth. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass out to you an example of one of our students with an IEP. I actually have two examples, and if we have time, we'll do a comparison and contrast because they are very different in their abilities or lack thereof.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I know there are times where we get students who probably need a 504 plan, but never been diagnosed. Is it the same for like ESC? Will we ever get somebody who probably should have ESC, but okay?
Definitely. This just comes to awareness and education. Sometimes parents don't know that they have the opportunity to have their students screened to become 504 or ESC. Some parents do know, and it's not an ESC problem, it's just a discipline, boundary problem, situation that they need. And some parents, unfortunately, don't want their student labeled. And just to be a little honest, I have seen, I want to say the gamut of it all. I have seen sometimes the con of a student being labeled. I have seen the pro of a student being labeled. And so, but at any point in time, a parent can actually ask for their child to be screened for either or. I've seen a parent was screened for their child for ESC, and it wasn't ESC, it was a 504. So they were able to have accommodations through a 504 plan. Yes. Okay, so we take a look at this example. We should be looking at last name beginning with a B, correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So we're already looking at special education services. We have that one?
I'm sorry?
The first page is special education services and supports, correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So if we take a look at this chart, Reading skills and specially designed instruction, we're looking on the left. Reading skills and strategies are checked. Writing language and strategies are checked. Mathematics skills and strategies are checked. Self-determination, self-advocacy skills are checked. What does this mean? This is where the student needs support. How often? Regular classroom, weekly. So what this means, because sometimes you might look at this and it won't say regular classroom. It will say 50% regular classroom, 50% small classroom, or with other students of special needs. This student, apparently they're able to successfully operate and make gains in a regular classroom. However, they still need that support on a weekly basis. Now when we say weekly, just want to let you know that does not necessarily mean every single day. Okay? It just means, are you intentional, or do you remember that this student is going to need extra support? If you go down to, we continue on, it says specialized transportation, none. I just want to identify that because it's just to show the wide range of what an IEP can cover and what type of student is an ESC student. Some will literally need help getting down the for us down the stairs into the car pickup line. Okay, what are some of the accommodations?
So the verbal encouragement?
Yes. The examples of verbal encouragement?
Good job.
Keep working.
Keep working. You can do it.
I'm proud of you.
I'm so proud of you. I knew you could write your name on that paper. I knew you could. Even if something that's as small, this actually goes a long way for the student. Okay? And remember, note that it doesn't say a sticker or a stamp. Verbal. So we need to make sure that this student is verbally hearing us encourage. Next, what's another accommodation?
Visual, but it has
Visual.
an asterisk.
Yes, visual representation, specifically underneath it says visual representations display simple and complex mathematical concepts. So, is this necessarily for you, Mr. Miller?
No.
Not necessarily. Is it for you, Ms. Rapp? Not necessarily. Specifically, it says math. Now, if we continue, it says using visuals such as diagram or flowcharts. Mr. Miller, can we put up a flowchart of something historic?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. Same.
The
yes, Ms.
alliance
Rapp, right?
system, 100. That's the first thing that came to mind when we were going over World War I. They didn't understand the alliance system until I put it on the board, and then the entire class was like, "Oh yeah, that's horrible."
Yes. So with this student specifically, it looks like they're needing a math accommodation, but as a whole, they're needing visual accommodations. They need to be able to picture and see it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm that way sometimes. There are certain things where I'm saying, okay, don't talk. Can you just draw it? Can you just sketch this for me real quick? I can't see it here. Other ones, preferential seating. Okay. Why? Locating the student's desk in a place where he or she is best able to see or hear the teacher and complete assignments. This is key because it doesn't necessarily mean sit next to the teacher.
Yeah.
Right? Okay? I know some of our desks and where we teach are two opposite sides of the room. This is saying this student needs to be able to see or hear the teacher. If you notice, I'm primarily up here. So in this classroom, where should the student be sitting? Yep, right up here.
Yeah.
Definitely right up here.
So, Ms. Newton,
Yes.
I do have a question. Obviously, every student is going to be unique to some degree. We always have to take into consideration, different life circumstance. Using preferential seating, we actually just had a student who, and still have a student, who preferential seating requires their close proximity to a teacher so they can get as much support as possible, but contradictory, their emotional state, what they are asking for is they don't want to be treated differently, they don't want the preferential seating, they want to be further away from the teacher, so as not to feel like they're, how would you word it? Being targeted,
Yes,
So
yes.
how do we kind of balance this preferential seating compared to what they need to what they want?
Yes. So I think I would like to start first with how we began with PACE's mission and why we're here as educators,
Mhm.
right? We need to build that rapport with that student.
Okay.
So, I think we've all experienced a time where we want to sit next to the teacher. Someone wants to sit next to the teacher. Why, right? Because they have that, I want to be near you. So I think there's a certain kind of rapport that we can build, as well as, remember, we always want to use strength-based verbiage to them. Now, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I struggle with that. I catch myself, but sometimes I struggle with that because bullying just comes easy to me. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I am very much black and white about certain things, and I'm very much of if a student comes to me, they're going to receive honesty. Does that mean I'm there to hurt them? No. But I know that there's certain times where I can soften this up. I don't have to say, you need to stay here because you need to stay here. I can say, you don't want to sit next to me? No, why? What will you know? And then that student will say, all right, I don't want to leave you alone. Is you okay? I'll sit next to you. So we have to make sure that we're not just here to provide a systematic way of providing education, but this is the part where we have to be a uncle. We have to be an aunt. We have to be grandmama. We have to create that personality so that student doesn't feel targeted, but they do feel special. They do feel unique. Now, there are situations where, of course, you might need to go ahead and make that accommodation. Just with the tier system, IEPs also fluctuate. There's a time where the IEPs go through a review and they may take off that accommodation. You know what? This student is able to be successful without having to sit in, so we're going to take off preferential seating. So we as collaborators, we can definitely speak about that if this is beyond the student's perspective of the situation and the student just feels like I have grown and I'm mature. Well, let's try it out. We don't know until we try it out. So we can collaborate in those situations for sure. Some things we can, of course, make accommodations for, some things we can't, but at the end of the day, did we provide it? We want to make sure we did provide it, we did offer it. When they choose to not accept it, that's okay, that's a part of their growth, but we need to make sure that we're providing the support to them.
Understood.
Let's go ahead and move on. Do we have any other questions about ESE versus 504? Or how to read the accommodations? Yes.
Do you know when there are times where Miss Crowley sends us that we have to fill it out for a student?
The
Planning those, the IEP planning
Is
those.
Is that what that is? Okay, so
Yes.
that's what we're doing.
it's to provide this to be created.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're all filling out, hey, the student has high level distractions, all of a sudden on the IEP you'll see preferred seating.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
So the things that are good for our 504 kids are good for all kids, right? Like,
Exactly.
we always, using a graphic organizer is never a bad idea. Allowing a child a little bit of extra time who's having an off day is never a bad idea. You know, having a child sit by you on occasion. So that's the thing, like, what's good for gen ed kids is not always good for 504 kids. But what's good for 504 kids generally will work for gen ed kids.
Yeah. I like how you said. I like how you phrase that. I might use that from here on out. Thank you, Ms. Draft. You know what? 5,000 extra bonus points.
Thanks. I'm ahead of Miller.
There are also imaginary rewards at the end, just so you know. So yes, let's. Thank you for sharing that, and you're absolutely correct. And so we're addressing what we're identifying is that these are things that we do naturally as teachers. These are things that we already do. These are, but what we're doing right now is to continue to do them and continue to do them in a way where we can now use that as an assessment for all of our students, right? An assessment to say this worked, this didn't work, this works here, let's continue to work here, or we tried this month, let's talk to the counselor next month because we're still not seeing the gains we need to make. Let's bring in other people into this conversation so we can collaborate. Okay. And that brings us exactly to what we're talking about, processes and support. Who are they? Where are they at though? Okay, HCPS ESE instructor, we had one, Mr. B. We know that Mr. B is transitioning out due to, contract with SDHC and DJJ, but we shall soon be receiving another one. Now, when we say another one, I don't want to hold any of you all back from also becoming ESE certified. There's plenty of classes you can take and you can earn that certification. Eye contact, yeah, you can do it. You can do it, Ms. Miller.
Yeah, I have a surprise. Guess what?
Ms. Crawley?
Most teachers will need to be ESE certified sooner than later on PACE's dime.
On PACE?
Yeah,
Wow.
So they're creating they're creating an articulation agreement. They have one with one of the universities out in South Florida that is willing to, for any teacher that wants to add some, another certification, or if we have a team member that's not a teacher that want to be a teacher, they're going to support them. The organization will support them financially.
Okay.
And that is
Professional development.
Even the first year teacher program that usually costs about $3,000.
Yes.
So that is in the works.
Starting $3,000.
Yeah, for the 2024, 2025 school year.
Yay.
So that's actually
Space. Awesome. Great. So you too can become an ESE instructor, certified teacher. We have discussed the ESE and 504 folders that are inside of our academic team folder, inside of our PACE folder. program system. Advisors, that's all of you. It's us. Teachers, also us. Academic manager, Ms. Crawley, shout out. Ms. Crawley has all the data. And then, of course, this is going to come to the ATMSS team, which are be meeting bi-weekly on Mondays. And that team includes myself, Mr. Miller, the lovely Mr. Miller, and Mr. Beatty, who is unfortunately out today. But we will be meeting on a bi-weekly basis to come together to look at the data and to tier our students or re-tier our systems. And I'll show you our students, and I'll show you a little bit of what we'll be working on. So please, don't hesitate to send us one-on-ones. I know, Ms. Drop, you have emailed me certain things, and I was like, this is great, this is amazing. Thank you for letting us know. I'll bring it to the team. And then, of course, on Thursdays, we meet with the entire, school for a care review, where we can also receive some data and also share some data that we have. What are we going to do in those meetings? We're going to review the tiers, review data, and of course monitor progress. So, the primary goal is for all students to remain in tier 1. Right? We've talked about that. We don't really want them to be at 3. We want to be able to support them so that they can come down to a tier 1. Where the students maintain a C average or higher, 80% attendance, and 0 referrals through enhancing student engagement and cultivating a culture of excellence by readily providing a diverse multitude of support in all subject areas. Again, we already do this. I think we're a fantastic faculty staff, just saying. We already do it. But this is our goal for all of our students. We want all of our students to want to come to school. We want all of our students to be seen, to be given the support that they need. Maybe not everybody will have this. This is true. Some need extra math support. Some need extra English support. So we make sure that we're there for them. And we want to make sure that even though we say maintain a C average, we know our students, some of them, especially some of them, we know that they can earn better. We know that, right? We want all of our students to be successful. This is just where we're going to start with our standard, okay? How are we doing on time?
It's 4 o'clock.
It's 4 o'clock. So I'm going to say right on time. Any Q&As, any questions?
I do have a statement though. I want to say, Ms. Newton, thank you so much. You did a phenomenal presentation, very comprehensive. From the beginning, you were a willing participant. You took on the challenge of leading this committee, and so I appreciate the final results. And like I said, it's going to do nothing but increase the rigor of what we do, strengthen the rigor or the core of what we are doing on the academic end. So I thank you. I thank Mr. Miller, Mr. Beatty, who is not here, and I'm actually excited. We are seeing the fruits of our labor.
Yes.
Those little gains mean a lot. When we see those girls, making gains and all across the board, just
Right.
even them in their attendance,
Yes.
their attendance is improving because they know that it impacts everything else they do with their education. But thank you so much. And I can see care review looking different just because of the fact that when they see that tier 1, that T1 by
Yes.
name, the houses will even know, oh, okay, this is the support or the interventions that they get.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you
and just
so
to clarify, for the people who don't test, tier 3 is where you don't want to be for this, but for testing, you do want to be
I
level
know.
3.
That is
right?
true.
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
true.
gosh.
Yeah,
So
you want to
see-
academically achieve to
You
level
want
3.
level 3
You want
for
to
academics.
AMTSS down to
Yes,
That is
we
true.
don't want all level 1s
Yeah.
for
Right.
academic
Yeah.
tests.
Yes.
We're looking for level 3s.
Exactly. 3 and above.
Level
Are
3.
we? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
we
Oh,
are.
okay.
We are.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, yes.
yeah.
So like their reading, it needs to be a level 3 to pass the mission.
Yeah.
So tier 3 and levels are.
So just really quickly, even though it's already, I'm gonna cut it. It's already over. So Mr. Miller and myself, Mr. B, are putting together this chart that we're editing. Every month we're gonna edit it, and it'll be something that we can send out to you all, so you can see what we discussed and what is their intervention. And this is for, again, tier 2 or 3, so these might not be ESC students, so there isn't a place for us to pull accommodations or whatnot. This is also something we're going to put together, and some things we may have to ask permission from Ms. Crawley to support, such as pre-test or limiting the options from
Yes.
4 to 3, things like that. So we're going to put this together, have a conversation with Ms. Crawley about it, and then once that's finalized, we'll be sending this out to everyone so everyone can see what we've been working on, and so you can see whether they're making gains, or even if you check it, you're like, actually, I want to add something else on here. You know, can we also do this as well? You know, we're 3 brains, and 3 brains coming together is great, but even, you know, we're learning some more from each other we can all do. So that's what we're working on.
And I'll actually make this as quick as possible. Working with Ms. Newton on this, we've actually come to the realization that we're trying to, some of these interventions, we are trying to let the students actually choose the intervention. Some of them who are showing.